Yeah.
Rolling.
Life and Grace podcast.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how many this is now, but we've just been kind of getting to do this as we can, and we're really enjoying it. And
Yeah.
obviously, as we've gone through it, we've seen a lot of things that we could do better, and we've seen some things we've been pleased with. But nevertheless, we're just doing some dry runs and trying to feel comfortable here in front of these microphones and in a prescribed environment.
Yeah, kind of our beta version, trying to get all this knocked out and see what happened. So, coming together just to have some conversation. Man, I almost wish we could have video along with us all the time because we had some good conversation last night, too.
Yeah, that was great. Hey, Troy Nicholson.
Brad Holman.
Yeah, so we're coming at you from the basement, Basement Chronicles. I don't know what we're going to call it, but
The basement studio project.
So you might hear a meow once in a while.
A bark, heavy heel walking.
There is some heels up there, or anything else that might happen to surround our way. So.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to hear around here. Hopefully it's a mainly good conversation. So our thought today, we're going to take a stab at talking about grace. Part of Life and Grace was the idea of this podcast anyway, just about our lives and what grace is, what being a Christian is to us, and other things, whether talk about God, talk about our lives, talk about good whiskey, talk about cigars, we talk about whatever it may be. Today is the other side of it, of the very important grace. So how to start this? What do you think?
Well, I was just, obviously I've always had my own understanding of what grace is and the definition of it in my mind, and I went ahead and looked it up today as well just to refresh. And the purpose, or the I guess the meaning behind the word is really just receiving something that you don't deserve, and
Right.
or giving something to someone that they don't deserve.
Correct. Giving grace and receiving grace, right.
And it is not to be confused with mercy, which is not getting something that you probably do deserve, and such as punishment. If you do something and don't receive punishment, that would be construed as mercy.
Mercy.
So anyways, the two words are very similar but very different at the same time. But in terms of grace and kind of where we lie on that, we haven't really spent a lot of time discussing the topic, but I think we're all in agreement that we've sure had a lot of it, or experienced a lot of it. Do you get it? Or I think you get it. So we've had it and
been given it,
and hopefully some examples of when we've also given it to others. But I'm a little less apt to discuss that here on a public forum.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to really say what kind of grace that you've been given. I mean, there's so many variances in my mind as well. But the most important thing is grace that God has given us through Christ. It's where we get our grace from. As we give I heard as in my research, kind of as a thought process today, I looked some things up as well, and one somewhat definition of it I kind of liked. I did write down. It's gained righteousness at Christ's expense.
Right, not earned righteousness.
Not
it's gained.
Earned,
you get it because of what Christ did.
Because we couldn't earn a forgiveness.
We can't.
There's nothing we can do for that.
Forgiveness. And Christ Himself is a great example of grace.
Oh.
Because we sure didn't deserve that, and ironically, He didn't deserve anything He got on the negative side of the.
None of it, and he gratefully took it.
Yeah, He did, and so the grace that we're talking about is more biblical grace.
Right.
There's different types of grace. Like you can have grace, and that means you walk. I guess
the grace of a ballerina.
Right. Very, very, very diligent in how you move, and but that's not the type of grace we're discussing here. We're trying to talk to just the grace that you receive for the sake of being a believer. I have to say, you know what? I received grace long before I was a
Yeah.
believer. I just didn't see it as grace.
Didn't
I thought
understand it as that, right?
was maybe lucky, or maybe
Yeah.
whatever the reason was. I got something I didn't deserve. It was just good fortune. It never was. I never construed it as grace. But now, as a believer, you start to see not only the things that are obvious that you could construe as grace, but just the little things, the daily little things that that you start to see in a different way. And just one quick example of that
Yeah.
was, I was in a hurry the other morning, and I was trying to get ready for my lesson. I was getting ready to run out the door Saturday morning, and I was running out the back door, and as I was turning, my bag strap caught on the handle of the screen door and stopped me dead in my tracks.
Oh, yeah.
So I used to, I probably maybe would have ripped the door handle off. I
You
don't know,
get
but
so mad, yeah.
yeah, just cranking it. You're just not in the mood. It's not time, and I've started to realize that I think God has a really good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I think it was just him saying, "Easy, Tiger." I could stop you if I want to. Maybe you need to slow down and pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Watch how easy this
Yeah.
is for me to say slow down.
immediately was infuriated,
Yeah.
and 2 seconds later thought of it as in a different light, where
Yeah.
I was like, maybe that's God's grace. Maybe I would have just fallen down the stairs
Yeah.
had I moved forward too fast and not been too assertive in terms of what I was doing. And you just never know, and that could be a form of God's grace, even though we don't see it at face value like that.
Yeah.
Because we'll never know.
Right.
We'll never know unless we walk into the kingdom of heaven and go, "Oh
Yeah.
now I get it. I get why you did that or why you did this." That'd be neat to go back and see all the times we were given grace.
Hey, God, would you rewind that tape to April 1st?
Just show us the whole list of just the whole grace list.
Can I
if you
see
don't
how
mind.
stupid I looked going
Right.
out the door? He stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah, and I left that with a smile,
Right.
and
That's fine.
it was just me.
Yeah.
It was just like this internal thing going on, and I almost recognized it in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's just like, God, that's not God. The first way I reacted,
Yeah.
that's not God, and then I
your
thought,
reaction was definitely
and I
not.
thought, well,
Yeah.
it is God. It is God, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I'm sure
They're
that
good
He was
lessons.
showing me grace, and I
Yeah.
just don't know it.
Yeah, it's good lessons to slow you down and make you think about what you're doing before you do them, and just remember that what you've got going on may not really be as important as you think it is. Sometimes, or to be on time. In some places, is not always the best thing. Sometimes to be a minute late can save you in so many different ways, and
Right.
driving to church and missing that stoplight could be an issue as that as well, slowing you down. What I also just kind of keep on moving there, because I don't have anything good to add to that. I don't have a good story
From the grace
from
standpoint?
that particular perspective of it. But yeah, just to keep talking about grace, what I thought was interesting, the fact I hadn't thought about. Well, I've thought about understanding what grace is, and that it's been given to us from God, by Christ, by His death and resurrection. We understand that. Basically, John 3:16 explains it really well, as when it's been given to us, but also faith has been given to us by God, which I thought was kind of an interesting thought process. That actual faith is the same in the fact of that grace was like, wow, you know what? Where do I get my faith from?
Yeah.
We get it from God.
Well, how about wisdom?
And wisdom.
You could go on and on and on and on, and you start thinking about all these characteristics that you have or possess as a person, and they could be called grace. Grace could cover all the. Grace could say, "Hey, God showed me His grace and gave me some wisdom."
With some wisdom.
Right. So, that grace word can kind of envelop everything that comes from God, and I've found, as a believer that I fully believe that God doles out grace all the time. I've found it sometimes hard to accept it
Yeah.
because I mean, I've never. I guess I was taught really, really at an early age is like you earn the things you get.
Yeah.
You work hard and you get paid, and you do good at your work and you get raises and you keep your job,
Yeah.
and all those things that you just you're taught as a kid, just good manners, treat people well, treat people how you want to be treated. It's all basically biblical. It's just,
Sure.
yeah, it's just conformed or transferred into different words, but the point is like that all was that all was a form of grace. And I look back on that kind of thing now, and I realize, like, geez, I had a lot of tough things I could speak of in my childhood, but there was a lot of really good stuff too. And I don't know if you deserve them or don't deserve them, I guess, but sometimes it's hard to accept when you're at fault and you've done something,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you especially sin, because you're doing it against God, and then
Yeah.
you get this, as a believer, you get this conviction because the Holy Spirit is there, and He's real, which is also God, and that's
Yeah.
kind of hard to understand too. That
That's
whole
God
Father,
on
Son,
earth.
Holy
Yeah.
Spirit, and all them being one God, and
Yes.
the triune, and it's just, but yeah, that overwhelming conviction you feel from sinning, and then when maybe you get through that a lot easier than you should have or would have normally, or just in prayer asking for forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and meaning it, and truly being sorry and hopefully repentant for what it is that you've done. But grace is something that just it's so hard to receive, and because if you've done something, then it generally feels to me like you should have certain repercussions or ramifications from that behavior.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only thing that we do have to offer. I mean, we have stuff to offer to God, and unfortunately, yeah, it is our sin. That's the only way we can receive our grace. We come before God with nothing but sin, and that's how we receive and have
Broken. Yeah.
received our grace, is by coming to God in our brokenness and understanding that we can't do anything without Him, and that we do have repentance, in our heart. We want to, just throw it all down to Him, and I don't know, just ask for mercy and ask for forgiveness, and that's what I believe God wants from us, and that's all. There's nothing that we can physically do. There's not enough works in the
To earn
world that
God's
people to
favor,
earn
right?
the favor. God wants us to know, first and foremost, I'm giving you this grace no matter what your truth is, I guess, of your sin, because I already know your truth, and your truth is sin. I'm giving you the grace anyway.
Absolutely. And then what He wants from us is just that understanding,
Yeah.
that on our own we can't do anything,
We
or we're
can't.
going to suck at it, or goof it up,
Yeah.
or something, and God's there to go, hey, this is the way. This is the way you need to go
Yeah.
walk it.
And
What kind of moral upbringing would or upbringing the moral upbringing that I had, or maybe lack of moral upbringing that I had, however you want to look at it. We was a good family, and we had love, and we had fun, and definitely camaraderie, but we really weren't in the church. So as we grew older, we started to realize, like, those little things that we didn't have became
mm-hmm.
more obvious. But when I was a kid, I didn't realize there was anything
Yeah, no,
I
you're
didn't
too
have.
busy just having fun and growing and learning new things. And I think that's fine in a lot of ways. We have to experience certain things to understand what's good and what's not. And if we don't go through some of those things, then we won't have a good perspective on a lot of others. So understanding, our shortcomings and trying to change internally on our own to where if we change our heart, we change that soil that we've talked about in the past as well, so we can receive the good seed from our shepherd, from our farmer, from God, that we can work on our cultivation and our heart so that we can start showing fruit because of this grace. I mean, that's what it is. It's not that we're looking for it, and it's not something that should be really done, I don't think, to where anybody else may even know that we do it. I think that's even more preferred, is if we are doing things for God and not just for ourselves or for anybody else. We've
Well, it
done it
shouldn't matter who
because
knows
it shouldn't. I mean, nobody needs to know, and it shouldn't be to raise ourselves up.
Not self-fulfilling.
Not
no.
so self-fulfilling. So a lot of that, I mean, that's kind of a lot to wrap your mind around. I mean, you want to do things for God, and you want people to know, yeah, I'm doing this for God, and I want you to understand who my God is. And if you can do all that without going, oh yeah, but don't forget my name,
Right.
because I was here.
Right.
I'm the one that got this ball rolling, because guess what? You didn't get that ball rolling.
Well, I would say
lot.
too that in terms of grace, I was trying to sit here thinking about like what kind of grace have we experienced, in our lives, and not just me necessarily specifically, but I mean maybe we can go down that road too, but I'm talking about the kind of grace that we already spoke of, like the person of Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
That would be an extreme form of God's grace, because we sure don't deserve what he is offering us. I should say offering, because it's still available. It's not like it's too late, and that's kind of what I think. I was thinking about grace, and I started thinking, well, what other kind of grace has God provided us as a body? And just to mention to the people who are listening is like, and it's like it can be grace for you too. And I'm sure in some capacity you've already experienced grace and don't see it as grace, but I start looking back and did. But the point I'm making is, like, as you move forward as a believer, you start to experience forms of grace, and I start to look at, like, okay, what are the obvious ones? And then I started thinking about the things God promises to us in the Bible, just by believing who He is. That He went through what He went through. He sent His Son here, and His Son lived a perfect life without even sinning.
Yeah.
And went to the cross and died, and on that cross, and everybody sees the beating that He took, or the pain, physical pain that He must have endured hanging on the cross, or having those nails driven through His hands and feet. But the true pain that He felt was the sin that He had to bear, the incredible weight of everyone's sin, not just yours or mine, but everyone's.
Yeah.
And for that sake, I can be pure as snow, as I stand before God, because of that relationship with Christ, and that's available to everybody. And if you guys are ever curious about how to go about making that decision in your own lives, then we'd be glad to discuss that on a personal level too. But the promises God offers us are things like, I'm gonna clothe you.
Yeah.
I'm going to feed you. You come to me, if you're thirsty, and I'm going to give you water. Then He's the actual living water, and then all the things, the food, and and then you can start going into things that aren't really in the Bible, but they're blessings, from the property you may have, or the car that you drive, or your wife and your kids, and just all these blessings that are, around you every day, and we take them for granted. But, we don't deserve any of it, really.
No, and there's a lot of people in the world that don't have any of that, and they have the same grace available to them from God, from Christ, as we do.
Well, not to confuse the fact that, like, grace doesn't mean you're going to have stuff and everything you
doesn't.
want. I'm just saying that God gives grace, and those things I just mentioned are His promises to us.
Yeah, it's
not the car, not that part, but
I didn't get as nice a
Yeah,
car as you
right.
did. What's up with
What
that?
happened?
I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to quit sinning so much.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting. That's I think a lot of people have a hard time coming to God to receive this grace because it is a lot to think about. If I sat here and thought about all the crazy stuff that I've done to people, to myself, things that people don't know about, that
Or in
only
the
know
name of
that
fun,
in
right?
just having a good time. You're like, man, if I were to tell someone that I know some of the things that I've done, they'd look at me like I'm disgusting. Yeah, you
You
did what?
did that?
You think about doing what?
Right.
Or whatever it may be. And I think most people understand what I'm talking about, but it would be awfully hard to think that somebody 2,000 years ago died on a cross and just washed all that away.
Right.
And that seems crazy. It seems like a lot, but it's there. It's true. And once you stop and think about it and just open yourself up to it and receive it, because you don't deserve it, but you receive it.
Well, you got to
It's
come to the end of
just
yourself.
yeah. You have to die to yourself and
You
just
start
say
to realize like everything I'm doing,
done.
like what is the purpose of all of this? Why are we here? And
Yeah,
again, it can coincide with grace.
yeah,
Eternity is grace. I mean, and
yeah. Yes.
and we get a
Yeah,
chance to not necessarily prove ourselves here, but to glorify God in our time here on this
right.
earth, to better the body of Christ and help our fellow man and try to share the gospel and just whatever to make God's kingdom more appealing to people. It should be appealing. We were talking about this last night, was part of
Yeah.
our talk, is like people who are Christians shouldn't be stuffy, hard to approach,
Oh,
judgmental, mean,
they
any
shouldn't.
of those things.
And it's sad that so many are. I
Yeah,
experienced it myself with people.
I
That's
have
just
too.
unreal. I mean, that
Yeah,
go to church. I've experienced it in church.
yeah,
And then you can't, it's hard not to turn your heart against those people and almost
right,
give
right,
them a little of their own medicine back. You just have to pray for those people. And you're just thinking, why?
right,
What's going wrong in your life right now that makes you feel that way? What makes you feel so superior
right.
to these other people? Your sin isn't as bad as their sin. Is that what you're trying to
Well, I
perceive
think
or
it's kind of funny
say?
because we need to show grace too
Yeah,
as believers. So
yeah,
and I think that's what a lot of people forget. Sometimes, like you were just saying, it's like I want to even the score.
yeah,
They treated me bad for no reason
yeah.
whatsoever, and I'm going to
Mo-
jab them
Most,
back. But
yeah,
that would be normal human
it is.
response, and it still is in my world a
Yeah,
lot. But the bottom line is, like, if you really wanted to respond the right way, it would be to show them grace, to show them
yeah,
love, and to provide them mercy, words is you don't repay.
yeah,
So that's the neatest thing about this whole thing, is that it's not just what God provides for us. God is a God in the way He did things or does things are examples of how we should try to
yeah.
do things. I mean, I think that's the goal, right? Is to live as Christ lived, which we all
Oh, we're
are
all going to fall
terrible at.
short of that every single day, like you said, because he didn't do anything wrong. That's the problem. What he did was just try to live a life, or didn't try to live a life. He just lived his life that the way he wanted us to. He tried to teach others that he did try to. There was so many that would not
Except, right?
hear it, would not listen to that word. And once they did hear the word, they may have ran the other way and said, that's just absolutely nuts.
Right.
You think I'm going to live and forgive this so-called Samaritan or this so-called pagan person, or, they're non-Jews. We hate them automatically. And just all that. We're supposed to show grace to all these people outside of our community that we don't know anything about. Do you
Right.
understand that
Yeah.
they wear earrings in their nose and
Well,
whatever it
it's a lot
is?
easier to give grace, honestly, to someone that you spend every day with.
Mhm.
My wife shows me grace every day, and I try to show her grace every day. I'm probably not as good at it though. And same thing. My kids. I mean, just whatever. They don't. No one means to hurt you or do things wrong all the time. It's definitely not malicious. But day to
No.
day, when you're hanging around somebody all the time, there's going to be times where you're going to have to provide some grace because it's either that or do something really terrible.
Yeah, and then you're going to be praying for grace
Well, and don't you think
in return.
when you offer someone else grace that you're essentially letting it go?
Well,
You're
100%.
yeah, you're letting something go that you're holding on to internally.
Yeah.
If you're not showing grace, then what else is? What are you doing?
Yeah, that's the grace and forgiveness that we can give. I mean, we're not going to abolish them of their sins in any way. That's up to
No.
them and their relationship with God.
Well,
But
I'm
we're
probably
going to
going to
let
mention that
we
I
may.
was offended in
Hey,
some way.
well, yeah. You know what? I didn't really like what you said. I hope you think about it a little bit more. But hey, I forgive you
Yeah,
for doing that because I don't know what's going on in your head right now. So
that's right.
maybe you're in a bad spot, and we'll let it go.
Or maybe they saw
And
something in you that you're having trouble
yeah,
seeing in
that's true
yourself.
too. Then you're going to stop and think about, oh, wait a second. Why am I giving them grace? They're just showing me and helping me.
Right.
Yeah, that's something to stop and think about for sure. Because you never know. But mainly, it's wow. There's a lot right there. What you just said just started making me
It gets
gonna
deep, doesn't it?
yeah, jacks up my mind a little bit
Yeah.
there. It stopped my progress. I felt that door handle grab my
Yeah.
backpack right there in my brain. Oh, wait a second.
Right. Yeah, you get going, and yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
slow down a bit. So bringing what we have to remember again, going to those people that sometimes we may have issues with, especially in churches. We just don't want to forget as Christians while we're in church. It's kind of where I was going a little bit too ago was we can't assume or say people have to come to church clean in the manner of internally. Not, I mean, hopefully they come to church clean and they don't smell bad, but what we're talking about is that stinkiness on the inside, or maybe those people that we know, maybe they have a job that we don't support as Christians. Maybe there is a lady that's out there or a man that maybe they're little pole dancers. Maybe they do some things that we believe are sins. Are we going to tell them, you know what? Until you do X, Y, and Z, you're not allowed to come to our church,
No, absolutely no.
right? And
I
that's what I mean. That's you come with your sin. And
Yeah.
we're gonna let you come in here. We're gonna give you the grace and give you this community to
Well,
work on yourselves, and
I mean,
hopefully God
there's obviously
takes over.
believers in the church that you know are because of that relationship forgiven for their sin on a daily basis,
Yeah.
but they don't come to church every week without committing sin prior to being there. So as a
Nope.
non-believer, I mean, don't think that please about Christians. I mean, Christians sin just like non-Christians
They
sin.
do.
It's not a miraculous thing always. I mean, I think it probably does happen, but it's not always the case. Whereas, all of a sudden your whole life is completely conformed, transformed, which again God is capable of, but that is not usually the way it
It
happens.
doesn't happen overnight in most
Well,
cases.
yeah, and I think even we were talking about it a couple weeks ago, where
Hmm.
you're also going to have these peaks and valleys. Where sometimes you're going to be down there in the valley,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden your world's going really good, so you draw away from God and just start kind of getting into your own thing, and eventually, it starts to go bad or go
Yeah.
wrong, and you look back, oh, I'm an idiot. But the point is like this whole grace thing is so encompassing because it just applies to everything.
Yeah. It applies to everything. In what I don't think I keep reiterating, or I'm trying to keep coming back. For anybody that's listening, you'd already said we have the grace. So come.
Yeah.
It's there. Receive it.
Yeah.
Um, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to
You're not gonna be. If you wait for that, you're never
you're
gonna
never.
go.
That's the whole point. There's none of us that are going to stop doing all the sins that are out there, because I mean, when you start worrying about it, guess what you're doing?
All right.
You're sinning.
Yeah.
That's just that simple. So that's where I'm talking about earlier. To wrap your mind around the fact that you know everything you've done, and God knows everything you've done, but He's already given you the grace and now you just received the faithfulness and the faith that He has forgiven you.
Yeah. And grace is something like we mentioned earlier. You have to accept. You know,
Yes.
it's there, but I mean, it's like a gift. You know, you're just
Right.
you're given it. You don't owe anything in return. It's a gift.
Yeah.
And I think some people think that having to like you mentioned, go into an environment that is a church environment, that they have to transform prior to going there, and going there is the most important part. The transformation might happen. It depends a lot on that relationship that you grow and build, and that transformation happens not because a lot of times not because of consciousness of decision. It's more because you just align yourself with the things that Christ likes, and you start to like those same things, and
Right.
and you start to try to emulate that. And I think that's what, as believers, being refined means. And I've heard the analogy one time where, like, we're like fine metal, like gold or silver. The purer it is, the closer you get to Christ. Is kind of reminiscent of that. And pretty soon you're so shiny that Christ can see His reflection in you. You
That's
start
gold,
to
right.
reflect Christ, and that's when now you've started to show grace as well as receive it.
And I think that's kind of scary to think about, coming in as well. Just understand a lot of it is you're going to feel different. Something's going to feel different, and it may not be right away, but then again, I know there's so many stories that I've heard from some people that I know that, man, I felt different. I just got down on my knees, and some people cry. They just like, please, forgive me. I want to receive your grace. I want to receive this goodness, and I have faith in you that you can change me, or whatever it may be, and however they say it. And then just all of a sudden, just peace.
Yeah.
Feeling of peace comes over them.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're perfect and they're not going to sin again, but man,
They just know it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. I am a sinner, and the more that you can admit that and understand, and then truly want to change internally those things, your heart, your mind. It's hard to change that mind because your thoughts go everywhere. But if you can start working on those things, boy, just one little thing, day after day, the change in you will be seen by others, because like you just said, they'll start seeing the reflection of God in your
Behavior.
day-to-day behavior.
And and that's something I think too that people need to realize is, just because you see me a certain way on a given day, where my I'm polished, where I may be in a place where you do see Christ in me, and then there might be a day where something happened.
I was up late last night. Sorry, folks.
Something happened. I got a little like Pepsi spilt on my my surface or something. I'm sticky and foggy, and so we're all capable of forgetting what's important, and inevitably it never fails. I always end up realizing that, like, I'm trying to take control again. I'm trying to be in control, and I just need to just back off and have faith that God's grace is sufficient, which is a verse in the Bible. His grace is sufficient, which means the grace He provides is all we need.
Yeah.
He knows what's best for us more than we know what's best for us.
Yeah. That's why he's already done it. He's already done all the work. We just have to accept it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because man, I wouldn't know what to do at this point without it.
Right.
And if I didn't have it, I would be I think that feeling of being overwhelmed would start taking over, the heavy laden on your shoulders. You could just be like, I'm not going to be able to do this myself. And I think there's so many people that think they're alone, and they do succumb to that scariness, if you want to call it some of that anxiety, when you just get in your own mind and you start worrying about tomorrow and you start forgetting. It's done.
Yeah.
It's over.
Well,
you don't have to battle this.
But, I would say probably I have never experienced a lot of anxiety. I know people that have, and I know people that have been on, antidepressants and and they're searching for this peace, right?
Yeah.
And so, to me, anxiety would be, worrying about things, worrying about things like tomorrow, worrying about, potential bad things happening before they even happen, and that is anxiety. And I think, based on, my belief system and my faith, that, if you truly believe in God and God's grace, you realize that it's like, it's going to be okay. I mean, that doesn't mean go and curl up in fetal position and suck your thumb and things are going to change. You got to move, but God is going to give you a way. Yeah. He's going to give you a way to get through whatever it is that you're dealing with. He is never going to allow you to deal with something that you absolutely can't handle, but you got to rely on him and you got to trust him, because as soon as you think you have it, it is not going to go well or end well most of the time. And if you have anxiety about it, then you're literally not allowing God's grace to show or to act or however you want to say that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, I do have, and I mentioned this before, I have a hard time staying in the Word every day, and I don't go to God with everything. I'm not just a prayer you talked about. Stephanie prays all the time. You see her lips moving as you drive down the road, which is awesome. If you can get to that point where you're just like, oh, I can't do anything about it. I got to pray for this person or pray for myself or pray for this thought that I'm having. We have to remember, one of the descriptions of God is a great counselor, somebody that we have to take things to. Yeah. And you go, hey, God, I got this thing going in my brain right now. Can we talk about it?
Well, what's funny, we have a similar characteristic in that if I can do something myself, I'm not going to ask somebody else for help. Yeah. If I can do it myself, even if it might take a little longer doing it myself, whatever, but I'm not going to burden somebody else's busy world and life if I don't have to, And honestly, that is kind of what you just described in your prayer life, right? It's like I don't want to bother God with something so trivial.
Yeah, that I shouldn't be worrying about.
I shouldn't be worrying about it. And quite honestly, I can deal with it. God doesn't have to take it. He didn't have to take it.
Like big boy.
But I think if you think about that, you start thinking it's borderline ridiculous because you're basically saying like God's got too much on his plate already. He can't handle it or whatever.
I'll help you.
God doesn't need us. He doesn't need us to help him. He's perfectly capable.
Well, he had to do this whole universe thing. He doesn't need my trivial
no, I don't think
concerns.
Right.
Well, the crazy thing is he wants them.
He wants them.
Why do you want them? Because I don't want them.
Right. Yeah, because,
you want to help me.
Because he wants us to have peace. And he wants us to be able to rest. We talked about weary last week. You know? The opposite of weary would be like rested and
rejuvenated.
Comfortable, rejuvenated, maybe
all kinds of
joyful or content. There's a lot of words, but the point is like you're gonna accept God's grace and get out of the way.
Yeah.
If I'd get out of the way most of the time, it would probably be a lot easier.
Yeah, my life would be a lot easier if I did that, and I choose to take on small battles and gosh darn, a lot of times when I start taking on some of these small battles that I think I've got this.
Uh-huh.
And then next thing I know, it's not so small anymore.
Right.
You're like,
Yeah.
wait a second, I got this.
Yeah.
Let me try it again. And it just keeps getting bigger. And then next thing you know, you're like, God, I need some
Right.
help. This thing is huge. What happened?
So I think that goes back to the
Yeah.
God sense of humor thing. You know, he lets you do that little thing, and then all of a sudden it turns into a big thing, and he's out there going,
Yeah, and all of a sudden you feel like you got a
need me
piano
yet?
sitting on
You
you.
need
Like,
me yet? You need some help, and then finally you're like, hey, Uncle or
Okay.
God.
yeah, Father.
Yeah. So,
Help.
anyways, that's pretty good conversation, and grace is something that everybody
Yeah.
needs. And I think because, if you kick everybody out of your life that offends you, who's going to be left in your
Yeah.
life?
And if you don't know you need it, guess what?
Yeah.
It's already yours anyway.
Right.
You just open it up, receive it, and things will work out.
All right. Well, let's kick off
a good one.
for now.
All
That
right.
was good. Grace.
All right.
Grace. Show it. Give it.
Life and
Accept
Grace.
it.
Life and
receive
Grace
it.
podcast.
Yes,
Later.
sir. Nice talking to you, Troy.
See you, bro.
All right.